Hello friends, James Stevenson here with a video about something my forecast did not include. Have I sparked your interest? If not, there's the Loki cam with Loki in it, so you can keep an eye on him while I'm sharing my desktop with you. So I did not talk about foreign currency translation adjustment anywhere in my 30 tweet thread. Seems like I had lots of opportunity among 30 tweets where I could have talked about it. And in this video, I'm explaining to you why I didn't mention it. I got a few comments from people asking, hey James, the dollar has been strengthening against foreign currencies all throughout this quarter. The dollar's getting more valuable, you can buy more foreign currency with it. Will that have an impact on Tesla's income statement? And the answer is yes, it will. It's called Foreign Currency Translation Adjustment, which I had to add a section to my model for. So you may recognize the screen that I'm sharing as being from my detailed model tab as I adjust my screen ever so slightly for you to be able to see the detailed model here. So this is the same spreadsheet that I've been using for all the rest of the stuff that I reviewed in parts 1 through 30 of my video series about my Q3 earnings forecast. I'll leave a link in the video description if you want to see all those videos. So for example, here's my income statement expectations. I think it's going to be about $4 billion worth of non-GAAP, well, these are GAAP earnings, sorry, 4.1 billion-ish, between 4 and 4.1, I'm hoping, of GAAP earnings. And then in the next section down, I do non-GAAP earnings a little bit higher because of the stock-based compensation. That's the difference between those two. So I'm forecasting $1.27 of non-GAAP earnings per share, but I have adjusted all of these numbers since the last time I made that video. So previously, these just linked to the numbers in the sections above that figure out how many dollars worth of revenue and cost of sales to expect for all the different kinds of products Tesla sells around the world. But to each of these formulas, I've added now to that link another number from another cell way down in that section that I just teased, 1800 through 2050, I think, is how far down I went. So I needed to figure out how to adjust for foreign currency translation impacts. And so that's what I have. I'm going to scroll back down to where we started. In the foreign currency translation adjustment, so what level of detail information do I need here? I need to know for every model Tesla sells what its revenue is, and I had to have it at both the automotive sales revenue line and the leasing line. So I brought all that info in. These are all just linked to wherever they come from in the section above. Also, I needed to bring in total Tesla Energy revenue, total services and other revenue, and regulatory credits revenue. And then in the section below that, it's all that same info again, except for cost of sales instead of for revenue. So all of these rows are just bringing in the amount that I was forecasting for each of these. Okay, so once I've got that, I needed to know how much has the dollar strengthened against each of the major foreign currencies that I want to adjust for. So one of those was the Chinese yuan. And if I drag this over and drop it right here, you can see that Bing will tell you how much this has moved since the beginning of July. So at the beginning of July, the exchange rate was 6.7 yuan per dollar. And by the end of September, September 30th, it was 7.11 yuan per dollar that you could buy. So the dollar is strengthening here, allowing you to buy more foreign currency with each dollar. So that is what I have plugged in right here. It's the 670 divided by the 711. That gives you 94%. It's the Yuan Index that we're going to use. And then for each of these kinds of revenue, I needed to identify how much of that revenue is being earned in that currency. So in the case of Model S and Model X, those are really expensive to import from California into China. So I think probably only about 2% of Model S and Model X are being bought in the Chinese yuan currency. It's a lot higher for Model 3 and Model Y because those are produced domestically. Now, most of what Shanghai produces is divided between being exported to foreign countries versus being sold in China. So globally, about 20% of Model 3s and globally about 25% of Model Ys are being bought in Chinese yuan. And I just plugged in a number for Shanghai Robotaxi, so it'll be there for later, I guess. All right, and then for leasing, less leasing is happening in China probably of Model S and Model X and Model 3 and Model Y. So I've got lower expectations there. These are just my assumptions trying to get a good feel for how much of the revenue is coming to Tesla as Chinese currency, renminbi. So Tesla Energy, 10% is what I'm assuming. Services another, about 25% is my assumption. So that gives me yuan percent of global total revenue, about 3, well, what's this doing exactly? I only just made this. All right, so that number's not telling us anything useful yet. So we do that for the revenues, and then we do that for the regulatory credits, and then we do it for all the costs as well, right? So in the section below, okay, how much of the cost is coming from yuan? So probably not any of the costs related to Model S and Model X are being purchased in yuan, right? But for the Model 3 and the Model Y, even the ones that you're exporting, the goods and the labor wages that you're paying are being paid in yuan, right? So we need to adjust those costs. It's a double-edged sword, currency translation adjustment. It's not just that your revenue falls when your currency, your reporting currency, strengthens against other currencies that you do business in. It also reduces the amount that you reflect on your income statement for costs because it was cheaper for you to buy that stuff when your reporting currency strengthened against those foreign currencies. So larger percentages are what you see here for Model 3 and Model Y costs because so much of the production of Model 3 and Model Y is happening in China where the parts and the raw materials and the labor is being locally sourced in local currency. Okay, so down we go to the Euro section, and I've got a link here for Euros as well. So here's what the Euro looks like. So back at the beginning of July, it was around 0.96, and by the end of September, it was 1.02. So what do we see? Here on the Euro index line, we see those values, 0.96 divided by 1.02. It's a coincidence that they both happen to work out to 94%. I guess the dollar strengthened against them both, so it's not a total coincidence. But they didn't have to be the same number. They just happened to be the same number in this case. So I'm thinking about 15% of Model S and X revenue happens in Europe, with only about 10% of Model 3 and only about 9% of Model Y sales going to Europe at this point. And I've got these numbers in here based on work that Troy Teslike did for Q3. So maybe I shouldn't have even shown you those numbers, but probably there's not very much you can do with only those two numbers by themselves. I've done this with it. And the same for leasing. Then in the Tesla Energy and Services sections, I've got bigger percentages here for how much of that business is being transacted in euros. And then we've got the costs. So these costs are still pretty low. They'll climb as Giga Berlin becomes a bigger portion of Tesla's production globally, but for now, these costs are pretty small, that are denominated in euros that Tesla's needing to pay. All right, so you do all that, and then it's just math. So, for example here, we're just multiplying the basis that we brought in first up on row 1803. How many dollars were we forecasting before we made this adjustment? And then you want to multiply that by, I'll scroll up so you can see what 1869 is. We'll remind ourselves. Well, maybe I'll show you the first one. So here's that cost basis I just mentioned. Then the next thing you want to reference is this Yuan Index of 94%. So that's on row 1866, so that's this number. You want to subtract 1 from it, which gives you negative 6%. You want to multiply that negative 6% by the number in cell 1869, which is 2%. So you're taking 2% of the number times a negative 6% impact. And then to that, you want to do the same thing again, referencing the same basis again, but for the yuan. So down we go. Sorry, to the euro. So here's the euro section, and there's the euro percentage. So you're doing the same thing twice, and you're adding those together to each other. And it's a whopping $10 million impact for Model S, $10 million for Model X, $92 million for Model 3, and $243 million worth of revenue reduction for Model Y. So Model Y, clearly the biggest impact here on total revenue, which is, 0.35 billion worth of revenue reduction on automotive sales. Then for automotive leasing, the basis is already really small, so these amounts are a lot smaller. Then there's the number for Tesla Energy, 24 million to the bad. Services another 54 million to the bad, making a total of 441 million. This is a memo item because regulatory credits are already included in automotive sales. And then we do the same thing again. It's the same, literally exactly the same formula. I've just locked in the yuan section and the euro index cells, so that those always stay the same, but the rest of the cells move relative to where I've placed them, so that they're bringing in the correct basis and the correct percentage assumption. So that's how I'm getting to all of these cost dollar impacts for automotive, for leasing. And you see these amounts are about the same size, right? For energy, a little bit bigger impact there, and then for services and other. So the total amount of the cost of sales is 442 million. And that's doing the right thing. It's adding up what it's supposed to add up. These are all working, and then here's 441 million worth of revenue reduction. So what do you get when you combine those two at the gross margin line? You get $0. So let me take this out 3 more places. So this is the billions place. This is the millions place. So it's less than $1 million. It's $457,000. Which is, of course, a totally useless number. What I ought to say about this is it's 0.0 billion at the gross margin line. So it's not changing gross margin by any amount that you would care about in total. And that is why I decided not to mention it in my 30-tweet forecast thread that I just sent out earlier today. It's reducing revenue, and it's reducing cost of sales, but it's reducing them by almost the same amount, so nearly no impact on gross margin. And I didn't want to confuse people by saying that and then saying, oh, and by the way, the impact on earnings is almost nothing. So with that, we will check back in with Loki. Yep, he is still sleeping. And I will outro and say if you've enjoyed today's video, click the like button, and if you're not subscribed to my channel, you can go ahead and subscribe to my channel and click the notification bell to get alerts. And I always want to thank the executive producer of my channel, Kathy Kitchler, for her support, and I will see you in the next one.